yeah? So this will hopefully get a new demographic of new subscribers that are willing to subscribe to this channel. This channel is one of the best channels out there. Not particularly for entertainment, you know. I recognise that I'm not particularly a comedy genius. Neither am I an exercise genius. However, a lot of people, for some reason, do like to listen to this channel. I can't explain why. Can you? I definitely can't. So this is a really, really lovely area to walk. I find myself walking and talking, which is an absolutely amazing thing. You know, so the question remains then whether we should, you know, whether it's nobler in the mind. Oh my God, look at the size of that moon out today. That's incredible to think that there's a spherical object there in the sky, just looming, orbiting. Just mass. What is the dog is doing poo there? Just literally looming. Isn't that amazing? How do some owners pick up the dog poo and others don't? It's incredible, isn't it? Maybe they've run out of bags. It's really hard to say, isn't it? Or I've got to take the dog out, but I hate the dog, but I've got to take him out because he's going to shit in the house otherwise. I don't mind if he shits on the lawn. Dogs shit. I ain't picking up dog shit. And when I lived in the south of France, we had loads and loads of people letting their dogs shit on the pavement and no one picking it up. I mean, it was just a thing. I don't even know whether that problem's been solved in the lovely Aix-en-Provence. I don't even know if that problem's been solved. How many generations of people have lived and died since then? It's been more than 25 years since I've been there. Aix-en-Provence. If I can go back there, that'd be pretty amazing. Going back there, just seeing the sights again. Staying in a hotel there, you know, it'd be quite amazing to go some of these places that I haven't been to in decades, you know, going to Vienna. I used to dream about Vienna, and then Cologne. Oh, Cologne, yeah, not Cologne, actually, yeah, Cologne, Barbarossa flats, and just going to those old haunts. Can you imagine that? Just going back there again. Wow. Maybe seeing my first love. I dread to think how old she is now. I just really scary how old she is. Wow. Incredible. We went to a Snap concert together. How did that even happen? I experienced my first taste of love. It was incredible. being loved by another person. Incredible feeling, you know. Magic. But what is that thing where do you know what I mean? Huh. It's incredible, isn't it? Love isn't quite the same, is it? Is love everything? It wasn't enough to keep me there. It wasn't enough. I wanted to come back. I changed my mind and wow. Being on your own can do crazy things with you. Crazy stuff. Crazy times. And now, one parent gone, the other one going. Well, going. Hardly. So she's got 20 to 30, 20 years in her. I'd say she'd do 20 years. Extremely robust person. I mean, it's really good for me looking at them, you know. You know, my dad, my mum. There's some sense of robustness there. It's incredible. So let's talk about getting older today, getting older and what it means. Because I thought about this conveyor belt where the new generation comes in and the old one gets pushed off the conveyor belt and it goes on and on. So when I say new generations, within that conveyor belt, it's actually, they're stacked on top of each other. And it's really interesting because the conveyor belt moves, and on this conveyor belt there are the mutations, the adaptations that evolution take to do. But they're also, when we come to the end of the conveyor belt, for your particular, shall we say, life expectancy, you fall off into the quagmire, you die. Those that die earlier could get plucked away, plucked off the conveyor belt. And the different species or genuses, they go on to another conveyor belt once they've sufficiently changed enough to drop down. But then you could argue, how could this have been going on for so long? Well, this is dream language I'm talking about here. So I can invent this. It's pretend and it's fantastical. And it doesn't have to make sense. Because if you look at a world without time, then things start to make sense. Things really do start to make sense. Because what you actually have is you have a let's just talk about time. Okay, so say I'm meeting a friend tomorrow, calls me today and we discuss and say, let's meet tomorrow. And we agree on a time at 3:30 at a coffee shop. And we know, the laws of probability. Yeah, he could have an accident. I could die in my sleep. But it's likely that we do meet tomorrow. But what if we never meet? We never, ever meet. Because there is no tomorrow. So basically, you don't meet. So we arrange to meet, but we don't ever meet because there's no such thing as time. So that doesn't make sense because say we do actually meet, and say if it's day after tomorrow now, and we know we've met, but we can't explain why we've met because there's no time. So if we see time less like a quantity and more like a map, so on a map we've got X and Y coordinates and time could be a G coordinate. So what if time was no different from an X and Y coordinate? That's interesting. That means there's no such thing as time. That means that there's just existence. Predictions. Just like mapping out coordinates. So if you're going to work, I'm going to work tomorrow and I work 14 miles away from home. I have to be there at 10. Because us humans like to communicate. What do you do? So what are you doing? Where are you doing it? So I say to my friend, I am a plasterer. And tomorrow I'm plastering a house at 10 a.m. The house is 10 miles away in Bristol. I live on the outskirts. Okay. So the person's got an idea. What you're going to be doing, where you're going to be doing it, and when. Roughly. They haven't given me the actual address in Bristol. You've just given them the rough coordinates. So, and I've used that word coordinates. Now, is it possible to get rid of one dimension of space? So say if I see a tree in front of me, okay, and I need to walk to the tree. That's my thing. And I walk there, and that's okay. But what if the tree was on a planet, and then actually my walk, it may look to me like a straight line, but it's more like the bow of a bow and arrow. So that, the stretchy, twangy bit, I don't know if that's the right thing. The bow, the bendy bit. The straight bit. Let me get this right. Is it the straight? No, it's the bendy bit. The straight bit would be the quickest distance there if you went through the sphere. Don't know what that word is in maths, but yeah. So that gives me kind of two coordinates. It gives me a compass bearing, but it's also a compass bearing with respect to the circumference. But surely there's another coordinate as well. What if it wasn't due north, due, then it would be a compass direction, wouldn't it? So you could travel over. You could travel over a vector, I'm thinking now, aren't I? Because you could travel in a northwesterly direction and get there. Oh shit. So northwest. But you could also travel, if it's a very long way away across the sphere, you could also travel southeast and get to the same point. So long as, and you get there quicker if it was more than half the circumference. You get there quicker going the reverse direction across the sphere. That's interesting. So in X and Y coordinates, let's look at it this way. You're looking at a map, say a map of the US, and you have to go 3 squares across to the right and 2 squares up to go to my town. 3 up. So those are kind of coordinates, 2 coordinates, but how does that relate to the spherical nature of the planet? Would you have to take that into account? Not really. Not really. What if if it was so far across that it was almost just... What if it's so far to the right that it's easier to go to the left to get to the right? The X and the Y doesn't really take care of it, does it? But it does on a sphere. So it's flat Earth versus... Right, we're getting there. Flat Earth theory, which is just X and Y. And then we've got round Earth theory, which is just one compass direction. And you can go the opposite compass direction to get there quicker if it's more than half the circumference. There's 2 ways of looking at it. So you got one rule for flat Earth, which is, it's not real, it's not realistic, but sometimes it's shorter and quicker, I think. For example, for me to go, like Uber drivers, they don't have like a spinning globe on their smartphone, do they? They don't have a spinning globe. Well, they could do, but they don't have it because the distances they have to travel are so tiny compared to the whole Earth that it's easier to represent their journey on a 2D map, you know, point A to point B, or part of that journey with like a flat car, you know, driving. And if they did a slight relief projection, there'd be like a 3D-ish car driving through 3D-ish buildings. It just doesn't make sense to have the curvature of the Earth mapped in to an Uber journey. It just doesn't make sense, even though it's more correct. So let's just extrapolate then. So we in this, just to recap, so we in this society, even though we live on a sphere, we opt for 2D representations, a lot of us. Yeah, it would be simpler to say, go northeast for such and such a while, northeast, or even southwest if it's further than half the circumference. So that means you just get one direction. Now you get the distance and the compass bearing. The distance and the compass bearing versus an X and a Y thing on the 2D projection of flat Earth. So when we say that time could be a third or fourth coordinate, how true is that? Is it true for the 2D map? Could be, because you've got X and Y, and then you've got a time. Very easily understood. Be there for that time. Could be true. Could be a third coordinate. What if the coordinate, was on a hill? Would you have to give that? No, because as you're travelling on the 2D map, you can feel that you're going uphill. You don't need to take it into account, unless that's a critical hill, and temperature changes, pressure changes, and I don't know, oxygen changes. You need to take that into account. So then it could be an issue. Generally, you wouldn't take the elevation into account too much. Normal journeys, especially if you're travelling by car. What about if you're looking at compass directions? So north, east, south, west, and then you get the distance of how far you're supposed to travel in that compass direction, and then somehow you get the time that you should be there. Yeah. They both seem to work, but they're two ways of getting the same information, aren't they? What about latitude and longitude? So many degrees north or south and so many degrees west. That would potentially map the globe, wouldn't it, in degrees? I'm just trying to think. Just mapping it. 0, 0. Yeah. I think that would map it. Even though it's a sphere, that should still surely map it, shouldn't it? Am I wrong on that? How does Mercator projection come into it? Maybe that's something you look up on AI. So, can you get to any place on Earth, say on a computer simulation, by just using two coordinates, latitude and longitude? Put that into AI, and then ask AI, can you, once you've solved that, can you then ask how the Mercator projection fits in to your previous answer, and just see what it says? That'd be interesting to find out if there's any sort of anything interesting to say. So we're trying to work out, if you're just joining the podcast, how time fits into coordinates. I'm just a lay person, I am in the top 1% of intelligence, but I'm nowhere, say Albert Einstein is in the top 100,000. I'm only in the top 100, so you can see there's a huge difference. If you get 100 people in the room, I would have been, or I am, smarter than 99 of those people. I'm that sort of level. But I'm not 1 in 1,000, not 1 in 100,000. So I'm that kind of level. I'd say I think probably Einstein maybe been smarter than top 100, top 1 in 100,000. Oh yeah, I think he probably was. Maybe looking at a million. Maybe Newton, even more than that. But yeah, don't know. I mean, Einstein made mistakes. He owned up to them. But I'm just trying to think, is it possible, being a non-scientist, in just being kind of like intelligent, is it possible then to kind of to sum up what what time is with respect to coordinates? That's what I'm trying to work out here. I don't know if any of you can help me with that. I don't really know. It'd be really interesting to find out whether you can or not. It would be super interesting. So I suppose what I'm getting at then is time doesn't exist, and we use it as a kind of a coordinate system to facilitate our lives. He has to be there in 5 minutes, rushing for the train, all the kind of thing. I mean, look, let's just be real here. If the boss says, or if you're the boss, and if your customer, one of your stakeholders, let's just say, says, I was there 5 minutes ago and you weren't there, where were you? You said you'd be there. You could reply to your stakeholder, well, time doesn't exist. So to say that I was late or I wasn't there, to say that I was late is irrelevant because I couldn't have been late because there's no time. If you said I wasn't there, I would take you more seriously because I do believe in coordinates. That's likely to piss off that stakeholder. You might lose a client. So that's really important to consider. It really is. Are you one of those believers in coordinates but don't believe in time? What happens if you don't believe in coordinates? So you don't believe that you can travel from A to B. So is that a problem? So say if you're in your kitchen and you need to walk to your bedroom, which is on the first floor, like upstairs, you'd have to, say, go from the kitchen, go through the kitchen into the living room. You might have to open a door, go to one end of the living room, and then proceed up the flight of stairs onto the landing. And then from the landing, you're going to open the door if the door to the bedroom is closed or open. And then you're going to enter the bedroom. And then you're going to say to yourself, well, actually, I didn't make that journey because there's no such thing as distance. Would that be problematic in any sense? I mean, how could you, like if you work from home 3 days a week and you went into work 2 days a week, and then you said to your boss, like on the fourth day when you should be in, the boss says, why aren't you here? And you could say, what do you mean by here? Here doesn't exist. Here is irrelevant. There's no such thing as here. And if the boss looks at you on Teams and says, Microsoft Teams says, well, why are you working from home today? You were supposed to be in the office. And if you say to the boss, there's no such thing as the office. But then, what if the boss actually knows what you're on about, and they ask you, are you working from home today? And you say no, then the boss would just back off and leave you get on with whatever you want to do, let you walk. But if you say, yes, I'm working from home, the boss would go and say, aha! So you believe in home, the place home, you don't believe in the place work, you're fired. So that's the interesting point. If you're going to have these discussions with your boss, you need to be, what's the word? You know that word. Consistent? It's not quite that word. Consistent. Like, if you don't believe in space and time, space, forget about time for now, if you don't believe in coordinates, then you need to say and follow that through. So say if you're with your partner and your partner says, look, we need washing powder, can you go to Asda? Then you can say to your partner, where's Asda? And she'd say back to you, you know where Asda is, silly Billy. You can say back to her, I've looked online, and online says it's there. And she said, yeah, it's there. But you can then say to your partner, there's no such thing as there. There doesn't exist. So it's a really interesting point. So let's just follow this through. So there's no time. So time doesn't exist. There's not a past, because obviously the past doesn't exist, because it's gone. The present doesn't exist, because you can't divide a point in time small enough for there to be a point of consciousness that you can rationally call, it present. Because what you're doing, okay, if you say, let me just prove that for a point. Your mate says, what are you doing? You could say, I'm talking to you. No, what have you been doing today? And they say, oh, well, today. You get my point? So talking to you, but what if he says, what are you doing? And there's silence. You could have said to him, well, I was paused before I talked. Before I talked to you, you just said, what are you doing? And there was just a point of time where I wasn't speaking, and I just taken in what you've said, and I was considering various responses. So you could have said that to your friend. You weren't actually physically talking to him. Your larynx wasn't, contracting, relaxing the muscle in it. Your vocal cords weren't vibrating, and your mind wouldn't have told you to speak. You would have been choosing the different options, the different responses. So what I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to get at here, is there's no such thing as the present, because you can subdivide each moment in time to smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller segments until it's infinitely small. And when you get something that's infinitely small, you can still split it another billion times. So therefore, the present is negligibly small. It's faster than the speed of light, the present. The speed of light is a definite speed. So the present is even faster, even smaller than that. It gets subdivided into absolutely nothing. So therefore, the present doesn't exist. And the future certainly doesn't exist, because it hasn't happened. So the whole concept of time is absolute bullshit. So we've just written off time right now. There's no such thing as time. And let's argue now that there's no such thing as space. No such thing as space. So currently I am walking on grass, on quite dry grass, because there hasn't been rain in a while. So the electrons in the slippers that make contact with the glass are being physically repelled in an equal and opposite manner by Newton's laws of thermodynamics, if that's correct, and other laws of so the ionic bonds in my slippers making contact with the ionic bonds in the grass. So I'm not slipping through the grass right now, even though there are huge spaces in between the atoms of my body. The electrons spinning around the nucleus, which are made into molecules, are so electrically charged and so compact that they're hitting the electrons in the grass. And if it was just grass, just light grass, I'd be falling through it. But under there's more densely packed material, densely packed molecules, particles of dirt, of dust, of stone. So it's quite ionically active. So there's a lot of charge. It would take a huge amount of force. For example, if I was fired from a cannon into the ground, I would most likely go into the ground quite a bit. I would bond with the ground. Of course, I'd be instantly killed, either when the cannon fires or on contact, probably on contact, depending on what would bind me inside the cannon and protect me from the blast. But I'd be going into the ground and making a crater and connecting. My blood would seep out, and and probably might even have some, because it's liquid, it would have more. It would more likely to mesh with, intermingle with, to be absorbed into some of the structures in the grass and stuff like that, and maybe become some of the grass. Some of the grass even might even grow using some of the moisture in my body, because obviously I contain a lot of water, so like about 50% water, as do a lot of other humans. So the grass might actually use some of my body water to grow, which is very interesting, after my death, after having fired out in a cannon. So what I'm trying to say here is, because I'm like solid sort of form mostly, I'm bouncing off this other solid. If the grass was liquid, if it was liquid grass, and I was liquid human, okay, I'd mesh into it, because the gaps in my structure would be so vast that I would dissolve into the grass. I wouldn't have to be fired out. So because I'm a solid, more or less, that's why I'm not becoming at one with the grass now. So it's a question of repulsion, why I'm not going in. I'm walking one foot in front of the other through mechanical means, joints that move. I'm falling forward. I'm controlled. It's a controlled fall. If I stopped, I could fall flat on my face, depending on what I did. And a lot of toddlers, when they're starting to walk, they do fall flat on their faces because they don't quite know how to coordinate, so that they can't mimic this controlled fall that we do every time we walk, let alone jog, run, sprint. So what I'm trying to say here is, does matter exist? And, well, I try to say, do places exist? Do coordinates exist? And because coordinates just refer, it's just like a graph form, it refers back to actual physical points. So that's why I'm talking about the physical reality. So can I then doubt? Because I've doubted time. I'm looking at the moon now. Some might say that, then infirm that I'm a lunatic. That's where the word comes from, lunatic. And he looks at the moon. Okay, so what I'm trying to say here is, basically, can I doubt the existence of matter? Well, I would argue that you can. The reason being, it's not something from my direct experience, it's something from theoretical physics that I don't understand, so I'm hoping that somebody does. But because there's probably more antimatter than there is matter, that all the matter in the universe can be cancelled out. Think of it like this. How can you get the Big Bang? Something smaller than my fingernail expanding out. My little fingernail. How can you get something to explode and be so heavy? It's because you've split some kind of fabric. You've split a reality. You've split it, and even using the past tense is a bit weird. And reality is splitting, is it? The universe is expanding. Maybe it's split. No, I take that back. The universe is just expanding. I don't think it's... Matter is splitting. I mean, in the sense that there's not another Big Bang going on right now. I really doubt that, but then I don't know. Is it a universe from nothing? I would argue, yeah. And I don't know theoretically, because the reason why it's from nothing is because to have a Big Bang, you have to split something. You have to split something, or you have to split nothing. You have to split nothing. Nothing was split, and I've got to I'm going to take out the past tense. Nothing split. Does that make sense? Nothing split. Split is the past tense of to split. Split. You don't say splitted. So will split. So it's almost like splitting. No, splitting is present. Split can be future if it's will split. But if you just split on its own, it's past. So even our verbs are tied into past, present, or future, which is unfortunate. It's no wonder. Well, we're so fucking hung up on time if it's built into the English language, you know. To what extent it's built into other languages, I don't know, but there could be other similar things going on, especially in French and German, which I speak fairly well. You have past, present, and future verbs, ways of modifying verbs, etc. like that. So yeah, very interesting. So nothing splits. So let's get rid of the verb split and just say nothing. Nothing. Can't even say happened. So the language breaks down. So I can't even use the English language to describe the Big Bang, which is a huge problem. It means that when a Christian comes to you and says, look, I believe in Jesus Christ, I believe that there was Adam and Eve, and not Adam and Steve, and I believe that Adam was made out of dust and Eve from Adam's rib, and I believe that the world was created in 7 days. And God had rest on the 7th day. That's what I believe. When somebody says that, and you come up with evolution, and you talk about the Big Bang, what you're saying is absolutely ridiculous. It doesn't make sense, because you're trying to describe it in a language that cannot describe what's happened. So basically, humans, we are using flints to light a nuclear reactor. You just can't. You can't use flints, just 2 flints and one human chipping away to light a nuclear reactor. So we're using the wrong tools. So that's for a start. Whether it can be described in mathematics, the Big Bang and all this stuff, what happened, is a different question, because I'm not a mathematician. But maybe it's more suited to mathematics, formula, etc., than the English language, which is so hampered with concepts of time and distance, matter, etc. So when talking about the Big Bang, all I can say is the following. If I say matter splits. Can't you split? You just say matter. I'd say, does it matter at this stage? Because I'm looking to get home and go to bed. But matter is just saying the word matter enough to describe everything. Not really, because matter does not exist because of the amount of antimatter. So nothing exists. And what about morality and pain? Does that exist? Like crimes. Well, yeah, I mean, it exists, yeah, because we're punished for crimes. And morality, yeah. You know when something's bad and good. You know, you tell off children sometimes, and you don't want them to murder your parents, etc. like that. So you don't want them to murder you. You don't want the police to murder you. So you know what's right and wrong to a great extent. So it kind of does exist in our fabric of society. It does exist. Maybe that exists more than matter and time. Because matter doesn't exist. We've just established that. Time doesn't exist. But love is a slightly different topic. Let's leave that out for the moment. I don't want to complicate things. Although I did mention it at the beginning of this video, if you want to go back and watch that. I argue now that morality and conscience, which is, you know, feeling we get when we do something right or wrong, conscience is more real for us than matter or time. So maybe, and let's talk about love now for a little bit. Love can be the roadmap to a good conscience, to show love to one another. I'll just speak up a bit. To show love to one another can be a bit of a roadmap for taking care of our conscience. So maybe we should care less about the time, care less of where we are physically, where we're living. Which part of that was an MX-5, by the way? Where we are, yellow colour. Where we are in the world, whether we're in Aruba or Nottingham or Massachusetts or Oklahoma or Arizona. We shouldn't really care about where we are so much. We should care about how much we love others, because that is more real to us, more real than time, more real than space. And on that note, I'm going to end it there, guys.